Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Brett Tippie podcast. I'm Brett Tippie, and I'm here with my producer, Mark Warner, who does the Low Pressure podcast for skiers. And this is brought to you by Ride Wrap. It's midwinter, and snowboarding season's here because there's snow everywhere.
Dude, is it even midwinter yet? It's still pretty early.
It's 2022 just barely, and it's full on winter. So
it nuked today.
It nuked. Yeah, which is more than puked.
Yes.
Snow.
Yeah. How many of your followers you think are like skier snowboarders?
I don't know. Probably a good percentage. You know, I don't know, but a lot of people don't actually know that I'm a hardcore snowboarder, and I was a hardcore snowboarder, pro snowboarder before I was a pro mountain biker.
I think almost as much as a biker, honestly. Like your passion for snowboarding is equal. In my opinion, like knowing you for a couple of bike seasons and a couple of winter seasons now.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I love it.
I think you froth more for the biking than you do for you froth more for the snowboarding than you do for the biking, I think.
I don't know. It's pretty equal. It depends on the season. They just go hand in hand. It's the yin and yang. It's like,
I honestly think it's because with the biking, it's work and you love it, but it can be work, right? But with the snowboarding, it's usually like, let's just go. There's no like, you don't have to do anything. There's no requirements for most of the time.
No, I still have to do some things, you know, like I'm still announcing pro snowboard cross and some amateur snowboard cross.
You do?
I still have to advertise some, snowboard clothes and
when are you doing the snowboard cross?
Announcer for World Cup Snowboard Cross. And when they come to Canada, I do the BC series, the Canada series. I do the Para.
I didn't know that. Is it because they did COVID that it wasn't going? Or?
They didn't happen. It didn't happen last year.
Oh.
Yeah. But typically I'm always up at Big White where they have a permanent track. And, I go to work, do the announcing, but I also bring my snowboard. So as soon as, the event is over, I'm snowboarding actually before the event, a couple runs or a run between, qualifiers and finals. And then after the awards are over, then I go until they shut the hill down at night.
It's not bad. So some of the people have been. For those of you that don't know, I pay attention to most of like the social pages and do a lot of the back end stuff. So we get a lot of all the requests that you tell people to ask. I see them. We write them down. We're working on them. We've got some big plans for you. But I also get a lot of requests about stories from you, right? Like when you do the episodes, you talk to all of these amazing guests. And then every once in a while, a Tippie anecdote comes out. Usually something to do with like some crazy story that you guys have together. But people are also curious about your snowboard life or your snowboard career because you were a professional snowboarder, like on a world circuit.
Yeah, on the World Cup.
Yeah. So why don't you tell me like how did you get started snowboarding? Because I remember seeing like the same dirt pit that you started biking on, the sand pit, the gravel pits. You were snowboarding before biking.
Actually, I went down the gravel pits on my board before I did on a bike.
And then you make
mountain bike.
Didn't you make that board?
I made that board, yeah.
All right, tell us that story.
I think I tried snowboarding in 81.
Really?
Yeah, and I made one in 83. 83. So I've been snowboarding 40 years, I guess, now. My friend Craig Olson, who I went to high school with and elementary school with, he and I both made boards, and I basically just took a piece of plywood and I made
actual plywood.
Yeah, made steps on the front and then sanded it into a curved nose. And I took strips of BMX tires and screwed them in either side of your foot, and I had an inner tube over the heel to hold you in. And it was a very rudimentary, rough snowboard.
So you just had a bike tube, and then you just stretched it and stuffed your foot.
Well,
underneath?
no, actually, I put my foot underneath the strips of bicycle tire, Shengshin BMX tires.
Yeah. And
then I took inner tube to put, to hold your heel in, to hold you into that.
Oh, kind of like how Crocs work now.
Kind of.
You flip the thing up over your heel for real.
And it was really rough, but it worked.
Did you ski? Did you board on it in the snow first or on the dirt pit first?
No, I went in the snow first. Yeah, but there wasn't much snow, so it was kind of like dirt and snow.
And did you like? I'm so fascinated about this, the whole process. Like, did you sand the bottom down smooth, or was it like rough like the plywood still?
I actually lacquered it up. I lacquered it up like heavy, Vertice and then lacquer, so
it's a nice slick finish.
Yeah, I had custom graphics on there, and
what were they?
I think I did some diagonal stripes. Yeah. And then I eventually started using door skins, little 1/8 door skins, and then would glue them onto a press.
Door skins.
Like just like thin, like
Oh, like a veneer?
Like like plywood, but just one little sheet of plywood. Plywood there is like
Yeah.
depends on how thick it is, but just a very thin piece of plywood basically. And then I would just glue them all together into a press, so I had a rounded nose, and I would cut them out on a bandsaw out of my shape. I had fins on them, and
Did you do this in like at school?
no, I did it at home. My dad had a wood shop, and
Like I just want to make a snowboard.
yeah, it was really funny because I was making my first board, and my dad came downstairs and looked at it, and he asked me how I was going to do it and what I was, what my plans were, and I explained it to him, and he goes, I got an idea for you. You should go down to the consignor shop, and they have a mono ski down there, and I saw these other bindings called Spademan, and they don't click on the toe and heel like ski boots. They click in the center. You should put these Spademan bindings on the mono ski sideways and use really soft ski boots, and you'll have like a really advanced setup. It's got PTEX on the bottom. It's got metal edges, a cambered flex. It'll be light years ahead of everyone else.
This is your dad.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Brilliant.
No, Dad, it needs to be short. It needs to be fat. It needs to be wood. I got these little rubber straps for bindings. I know what I'm doing, Dad. And he's like, okay. Sure enough, 10 years later, I'm riding Burton prototype boards that look exactly like a monoski. Long, thin boards, stiff, PTEX and edges. And he was right. He was like light years ahead of me if I would have listened to him.
Can you imagine if you had built one of those things?
Oh, yeah, I would have been famous.
Right? Who's Ken Alkenbach? He would he even have been on your show? He would have been interviewing you.
Yeah, right. I hadn't met Ken yet, but I did actually stop by his shop not long after that. He had a little shop in Calgary, and I had my grandparents live in Red Deer, Alberta, so I'd cruise through there, and I stopped by his shop, stopped by there and checked it out. But I continued making my hand-built boards for many years.
How many did you figure you made overall?
Oh, probably like not a dozen, but probably almost 10.
And they were just slowly getting better every time.
Yep.
Like little. Yeah, that's
I tried different shapes, and I tried going really fat, and I tried
always with the lacquered bottom.
Lacquered bottom, yeah. They're just wood, basically.
Were they fast?
In the right snow, yeah. Yeah, they worked. When you went straight, they went fast. But then I took them into the gravel pits. I actually carted up a gravel pit in '83.
Where did the idea for was it like a light bulb moment where you're like, oh, when you're biking one day, you're like, I bet you I could bring my board in here.
Yeah, I just thought it was carvable because it was like sand and gravel, and there was like this one pit called the Mollycott pit, and the gravel was like little pieces, like little peas. Mm-hmm. They're rounded, and you could sink right into it, and you could just carve the hell out of it. It was really quite user friendly. So that was really fun. It was like super raw. And we used to joke and make our own snowboard magazines, like as if there would ever such be a thing, like
yeah,
it was
right.
Such a raw sport. And I never saw another snowboarder unless I converted them for many, many years. There was no movies, there was no magazines, there was nothing. There was just me and my buddies. And as we converted more people to try snowboarding, we had more people to snowboard with way back when.
Do you ever wonder how your life may have changed if Cranked and the route that you guys took with biking actually went and took off with the snowboarding instead? Like, you know what I mean? Like you were kind of on the same path with both sports, right?
Yeah, I wonder about that. Like I wonder what would happen if I would have continued with making them, and Tippie snowboards took on Burton and Sims and Barfoot and
Tippie snowboards, is that what you were calling them?
I actually called them Vertice, which was the highest point attainable, and I had a little graphic like a V with it turned into like a triangle, and yeah, they were called Vertice boards actually.
Yeah. Did you sell any?
No, I gave some to some people, and I rode them, and I don't even have one left anywhere. I wish I had one so bad.
Right.
But we were quite lucky because there was a small hill just outside of Counts called Harper Mountain. Mm-hmm. And Harper Mountain allowed snowboarding. And I didn't know of any hills in Canada that did allow snowboarding except for Sunshine Village in Banff. They were quite early. And Harper Mountain would let us up there. They said, if you bought a lift ticket, you can run a snowboard, a mono skis, slide down on your moon boots if you want.
Yeah.
You buy a lift ticket, you're good to go. So I was riding the chairlift in '83. And
with a piece of plywood on your feet.
with a piece of plywood, with Craig Olson, with Stu Mackay-Smith, with my friend Sean Melnichuk, Marty Italo. Yeah, there was a bunch of us that actually just started snowboarding. So that went on through high school, and then I graduated and snowboarded for a year. And Todd Mountain, which was Sun Peaks now, still didn't allow snowboarding. Nobody did, but I heard Sunshine Village did, and I made the pilgrimage in the fall of '87 to go where a bigger hill that allowed snowboarding. And I got a job out there. It turned out to be a lifty, which was the worst decision ever.
Why?
Telling people, have a nice power run, watching people shred, and I'd have to wait for my days off to go shredding when I could have got a job as a dishwasher and shredded every day. And I swore that year I would never work in the winter again. And I didn't. It drove me nuts. But, I got to ride with all, the people in Canada that were heavily into snowboarding.
Because there was just the one mountain, so they all focused. They all
everyone pilgrimaged there.
Yeah.
Alex Warburton I met, and Ken Ockenbach and Dave Ockenbach and Don Schwartz and Dave Summers and.
So were you on your plywood board at this time too?
I showed up with actually I had gotten a Burton backhill, which was another piece of wood, but it had official bindings on it, and I ended up buying a Sims blade and a Sims Kidwell from Alex Warburton. And so I had edges and high backs then, and kind of advanced my
And you're
my
just
level.
like, my dad was right.
I didn't know that yet.
I
still didn't know that yet. But snowboarded there, and
this is like late 80s. It's still super early.
87, 88,
yeah.
the Olympics. And then at the end of that winter...
Oh, at the Calgary...
Calgary Olympics was happening.
Oh, so you're checking out the Olympics.
No, I never checked it out. I just snowboarded up at Sunshine Village. But
did they have any events there?
Not at Sunshine, no. No. But in the spring, I heard the rumor that Whistler was going to allow snowboarding, or Blackcomb was going to allow snowboarding.
Because back then it was Whistler and Blackcomb were two separate mountains.
Two separate owners,
yeah.
So Whistler was going to, allow snowboarding. And Mel Baker in the States was allowing snowboarding. But I, finished up in the spring, and I hitchhiked back to Kamloops, and I got picked up by a fellow from Vermont who was just driving around. He had lift tickets from window to window all across his dash, all the places he'd been on this road trip, and he was going down to Blackcomb. So I went down to Blackcomb with him, and I went snowboarding on a really big mountain, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And just continued riding, through that year, and then the next year, Todd Mountain allowed snowboarding, and all of a sudden, all these mountains started allowing snowboarding.
Yeah, when the big ones they all start following.
Yeah, Silver Star and Big White and.
Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that YouTube video with the patroller being like, "Oh, I don't get what they're doing, these clowns."
Oh yeah, I saw that old video. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll make sure we post.
My friend Steve Edmondson was in that video riding.
For real?
Yeah.
We'll make sure we post that up. So it's like late 80s, and you're really not like the biking thing isn't happening yet.
Hey, I was biking, and I was doing actually some steep stuff actually by then, but
on your own. But it seems like both
for
are
fun.
Both are still on your own terms, right?
Yeah. I didn't do any photo shoots. I didn't do any videos. There was no magazines or anything like that. Although Transworld had just come out, actually, I think that year, and so Ken Ockenbach had the cover. I think he took the photo of the cover. Was it, or was that Bud Fawcett? Anyways, he had one of the covers early, and so that now there was a snowboard magazine, and but I was just doing it all on my own terms. It was all just for fun, just for free riding, and just for a good time, and. Like I say, mountain biking, I was doing some steep stuff by then, but no photos, no pictures, no nothing.
So you've got these two like equally fun paths. These two two seasonal events or activities. You got your biking and you got your snowboarding, and they're kind of on parallel paths. They're kind of like they're progressing at the same kind of rate, it seems.
Yeah, the technology was advancing in both sports.
Yeah.
But I would tree plant all summer to save money to go snowboarding all winter. And so in the summer, I was basically working, and I'd bring my mountain bike for fun and a little exercise and just,
So then it was like your focus was the winter sports, the ride,
it was
the snowboarding.
Full focus was snowboarding.
Yeah.
So I decided I wanted to go racing. So I started racing on the BC amateur circuit, and I had no vehicle, so I would hitchhike, down to Whistler or down to Big White or to various different mountains, Hemlock Valley or Cypress Mountain or whatever.
Just like a backpack, your snowboard boots, and your
my
board?
snowboard, yeah. And I would just couch surf different people that I met and hitchhike. And that's where I learned the art of conversation, was like, hanging out with strangers and going to these different races. And so, I would do half pipe, I would do moguls, I would do giant slalom, whatever the event was, all on the same board typically. And it was a cool little hardcore scene here in BC. And all these little groups of snowboarders from different mountains would meet each other and would party and would compete. And it was quite rad.
Was there any money in it?
Not really. No. No, there was never really any money much for snowboarding, because even when I started racing pro, I was a hard booter. I was a racer. And the money in snowboarding back then was for freestyle and for tricks, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you were hard boots?
No, and I wasn't yet.
Oh.
No, not until 91.
Like, what kind of boots were you on then? Because you were on this like plywood board.
I was using Sorels, and then I'd stick ski boot liners in there, and it would give you a little more support. Duct tape and Sorels.
Just like you're putting on hockey gear, just taping yourself up before you hit the ice, right?
Yeah, and you learn how many wraps to do to get good support for like hard back days or for powder days. And so I did a lot of years at Harper. I did a year at Sunshine. I was always cruising down to Whistler, and I'd hang out at the snowboard shop house with Ken and all the snowboard shop guys, and he hooked me up with like some gear. And then in 91, I went to Rossland, and that changed my life, going to Rossland to ski Red Mountain. In 91, I met Christian Beijing and shredded with him, and he filmed me. Got on film for a movie called Alpine Commando, and I was one of the first snowboarders he ever shot. And I was actually... It changed my life. I was walking down the street one day, and my hero at the time was Craig Kelly. He's everyone's hero. He was like, multi-world time, world champion.
He was the first snowboarding superstar.
Superstar, yeah. Like he was the best, and I see this guy look just like Craig Kelly looking around in the snow, and I look, and kind of a big nose like Craig had, and just same look, and I kind of peering around, and I look, and it is Craig Kelly. And I go, Craig. And he looks up and he goes like, hey. And I go, oh my God, what are you doing in Rossland? He goes, I'm looking for my keys in the deep snow. And I'm like, and he had the Subaru with like the Thule rack on top, 4-wheel drive, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Craig Kelly for sure. And I go, those keys right there? And he's like, huh? What? And he looks, oh my God, I've been looking for these for 15 minutes. Yes. Hey, what's your name? I'm like, Brett. And he's like, hey, let me buy you a beer. Can I buy you a beer? I'm like, sure. So we went in the bar and we had a beer. And he's like, you should come up to the room, the Burton room. All the guys are upstairs. We'll grab a 6-packer. So we grabbed a 6-pack. We went up to the room and partied with all the Burton guys. And
of course.
It was
that's such a Tippie story.
Oh my God! So it got this story got crazy.
Yeah.
So I met those guys, Steve Matthews and Keith Duckboy Wallace and Kelly Jo Legaz, his Craig's wife at the time, and say goodbye after a few beers, and then I was boarding the next day and I ran into Craig and he goes, hey, I saw you from the chair. You're pretty fast. You want to come filming with us? And I'm like, yeah. And one of my friends, Jacob Best, who we competed on the amateur circuit with in BC, got in a Craig Kelly movie, a Burton movie, Board with the World, up in Powder King. And Jake showed him around his home mountain. Yeah. And so all of a sudden, I got invited to be in a movie with Craig. And he goes, we're going to go down to trail and we're going to ride those roofs over the stairways. Be there at 9 a.m. The main stairway right by the park. I'm like, okay. So I got down there at 8:30. I was a half hour early. Minus 22, super cold. And I waited till 1 in the afternoon. And he never showed up.
No.
And I was like, oh. So I ended up just riding the roof.
Yeah, you did it anyways?
Did it anyways. And my buddy was there and his dad was there and he took a few photos. And I left. And that night I was having a New Year's Eve party.
Oh, it was New Year's?
Yeah, it was New Year's.
Yeah.
And so in walks Craig Kelly with the Burton team. And he goes, hey, did you ride that roof down a trail? I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, yeah. And boom, he knees me in my thigh. Gives me a Charlie horse. I had just dropped acid for my third time. And, I'd never really, was kind of new to it.
What's going on?
And I'm just kind of like peaking, and my hero just kneed me in the thigh, and I grabbed him, and I threw him into a headlock, and then I ran him into my fridge, which is right there. Not really hard, but hard enough to let him know that I had him. And he struggled to get up, and I just powered him in there and let him know that I had him. And then I let him up, and his eyes were all watering. And I'm like, dude, I waited till 1 PM for you guys. You said be there at 9. And he goes, oh, dude, we didn't get there till way later. We were all hungover. We just got there late. And I'm like, dude, I didn't mean to poach you, man. You're my hero. I didn't mean to poach you. This is a nightmare. Oh, my God. And he's like, oh, we just thought you were just being a wad, dude. Oh, no, really? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, sorry, man. I should have gave you Charlie horse. And I'm like, I shouldn't have thrown you in a headlock and ran you into my fridge. So we ended up becoming friends. And,
those are usually the best, like, those things, like, make the best friends. Because you're like, oh, we sorted this out right away. Right? You go through it right away. You're like, that's a test almost.
It was crazy. Like, it was a real moment. It was,
all the Burton guys are like, what's going on?
Yeah. Like,
why does this guy have Craig in a headlock?
I wonder if I'm the only person to run Craig Kelly's head into a fridge. My hero, like, and it was a nightmare, but then it turned out to be fine. Yeah. And then he's like, you know what, dude? He goes, I watched you from the chair. You should race. And I go, I do race. And he goes, what, where? And I'm like, oh, the BC amateur circuit. He goes, no, you should race pro. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, dude. I don't have a speed suit. I don't have a race board. And he goes, I'll sell you my speed suit.
A speed suit?
And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, $150. And I'm like, okay. He goes, come to the next race. I'll bring it. I'm like, okay. So I sold, the only vehicle I've ever had that was not a Toyota 4x4 was a Volkswagen van. I had this Volkswagen van. I sold it. I took all the money. And my girlfriend at the time for that year, Linda, she and I rented a car and we went down to the next race down in Colorado, Breckenridge, Colorado. And I beat Craig Kelly the first run in the GS. And then the second run is the order of your time. And then I was 10th, he was 11th. He was right behind me. And he's like, you beat me. And I'm like, I did. And he goes, you want to bet for the second run? I'm like, sure. How much? $10. Okay. So we had a bet for the second run. And then he beat me. And then he beat me by enough that he finished 10th overall. I finished 11th in my first pro race. Yeah. And anyways, we were friends.
Did you let him win? Did you let him get ahead?
I did not. No, I don't let anybody win. Anyway, so I actually continued racing, and then the next season I got 7th in the U.S. Pro Tour.
Overall?
Racing GS overall.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And
so like I said, you had this. That's why I wanted to have you tell this story, because you have this amazing like progression and like ascendance on snowboarding, and then I want to find out how it switched.
Oh yeah, well that came from training in the gravel pits later, but it was just a bunch of different people that you come across, and I in high school I had gone out with a girl named Victoria Jealouse, and she turned out to be. I got her onto our race board for her first time. She was a ski racer, and I think we went out. I was in grade 10. She was in grade 9. We went out for like a week. Yeah, held hands, made out at the dance.
Yeah.
And walked to class together. But we stayed friends. And I got her onto a race board, and she went on to race, and she got 3rd in a World Cup, and then she won a bunch of World Cups, and she was like one of the fastest girls in the world. Then she switched to free riding. And she started dating one of the Hatchet brothers who made snowboard movies. And then she started doing big lines in Alaska.
Right.
And she was like Burton's, premier female rider.
Yeah.
And I sent some gravel boarding videos and some snowboarding that I made with 2 VHS machines to Burton. And I got a good word from her. And Burton picked me up in 94.
Because they kind of were like, isn't that the dude that ran Craig's head?
No, they never knew about
Kelly's head into the fridge.
I think me and Craig, and I think maybe Duck Boy saw that. But all of a sudden I was riding for Burton then. Mm-hmm. And I'd ridden for a few different companies like Kemper and Rossland gave me boards, but then all of a sudden I got picked up by the big one, Burton. And so I went to go filming for the Burton movie, and they Christian Bejen, who I filmed with in Rossland years ago.
Yeah. Your whole life is just a series of coincidences, and like not even coincidences, it's just right place, right time.
Totally.
Like
And,
it's so fast. It's mind boggling.
That's
to me.
how it works.
It's so amazing. You're just always in the right place. I think it's because you're always willing. You're like
I'm
you're a yes.
I'm in.
You're a yes guy. You're
I'm
like
in.
yes
Yep.
and
Yeah,
right.
let's do it.
Yeah.
So, Christian Beijing was filming a film for the first time for Jacques Rousseau, who did Adventure Scope, who made the Burton movies, and they came to film me at Todd Mountain, and then there's like a Chinook came through. It got really warm, and it was all slushy and warm, and there's no pow. And so we were kind of like, okay, what do we do? This is horrible. Yeah. And I go, I got an idea. Let's go take a board down the gravel pits. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah.
Did you whip out one of your personal boards?
I know I used one of these new Burtons that I got, and it was a big risk, but I carved it up on a prototype Stat 6. And so I carved some turns, I did some shoots, I did some small drops, and then it turned out to be Jake Burton's favorite segment in the movie called Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. And I was off and running as a pro snowboarder. And Burton like would send you so much stuff back then. Like I had like stacks of boards, boxes and boxes of jackets and gloves and all this winter wear and so many bindings, and it was awesome. And
you go from it's literally a plywood board to that, like,
yeah,
right.
And so that was 94, and then I continued riding, snowboarding, and then in 95 I did my first mountain bike movie, but I'd already been racing pro for 4 years on the board.
So you said, and I know you were still like tree planting and stuff. So like working for Burton back then, was there not as much money in it? They just sent you a bunch of gear, and there wasn't. There
was very little money. It was very little money. I had some entry fees paid for, and they gave me a little bit of money for gas and for some trips. So I got a little bit, but not very much. Mm-hmm. But tons of gear.
Yeah, which you could just sell. But
yeah, I rode everything. I broke a lot of stuff. I snapped bindings because I was a big guy and I was strong and I went fast, and technology was still advancing. But a lot of my competitors, when I started racing professionally against all these, top American guys like, Mike Jacoby and Shannon Melhughes, and there was top Euros, Martin Verdanemitz and all the fast guys in the world, they would go to South America to train, or to New Zealand, or to the, glaciers in Europe. Mm-hmm. I couldn't afford to do that. So I used to take my boards, and I had a girlfriend at that time named Paula Spruce, who would shuttle me in the gravel pits, and I would just hammer runs down the gravel pits on my board. And
your summer training, everybody's like skiing or boarding down in like the snow in South America, and you're shredding the gravel pit.
You don't want to crash in the gravel pits. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it was like sticky snow, but it worked. You could carve it.
Yeah.
And it just kept me boarding, and those reflexes and the timing and everything, and so sometimes I'd show up at these first races in Europe and it'd be low snow conditions, and I'd hear some people, it's just very low snow conditions, and I'm thinking to myself, I've been carving rocks and gravel all summer, get out of my way. Low snow conditions, I don't even need snow. But it worked. And so I was racing World Cup, and my first one was in Mont Saint Anne in 93, and then I started racing in Europe, and I'd raced in Japan and through the States, and I was
like your first taste of like traveling the world. And
yeah, well, I traveled a bit with my dad and stuff, but this is my first, I'm traveling with the Canadian national team. I was on the first Canadian national snowboard team, on the A team, and I was the first person, like a first Aboriginal, Native American, Indian, whatever, to be racing on the national team. And I actually I used to do some weird training things as well as gravel boarding in the summer. Like I used to go to this bridge, the Peterson Creek Bridge in Kamloops, which is like 300 feet above a creek, which is not even a creek. It's just usually dry because it's Kamloops and it's super hot. And I would crawl over the bridge in the middle of the night and stand on a piece of concrete that was about 6 inches wide and balance. And if you fall, you die. And my heart rate would be up. And then I would like
For real?
Oh, for real. Yeah, I'd get down on my snowboard tuck, and then I would just imagine, the first courses of the year: roller, fall away, left, steep pitch, work the flats, glide into the pitch.
You just visualize it.
Visualize
standing on this precipice,
6 inches wide piece of concrete, and
300 feet above.
My heart would be racing, and then, I would calm my heart rate and just visualize going fast. And then when I get into the first few races of the year, I'd get in the start gate and my heart's going pop, 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 pop. And I'd just be like, calm myself down. And I'd already done it with a, life or death situation. And it totally calmed me down.
Yeah. And
because normally I'd just be whiskey throttle and I'd blow up trying to, go too fast. So they calmed me down.
That's so crazy. It's like you'd be if you were like one of those kids today, those Russian kids climbing to the top of like skyscrapers and stuff. Would you be one of those guys today?
Probably one of those guys. Yeah. The craziest thing I ever did actually is my friend Craig Wilson said, "Hey, let's do that thing you do balancing on the outside of the Pearson Creek Bridge." I'm like, "Okay." So we went there, and I crawl over. He crawls over. We're both snowboarding. I look over. He's snowboarding. I'm down in my snowboard pose. I look over, and he's hanging off the bridge by his hands. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Go for it. It's a rush." I'm like, "Okay." So I climb down, and I'm hanging off this bridge by my hands, and I got to top him. We're both from Kamloops, so I let go with one hand, and I wave at him, and then put my hand back. And then he climbs up, and he sticks his leg through the railing of the bridge, and he goes, "I dare to hang off my leg." I'm like, "Okay." So I transfer over, and I grab his pant leg, and I release my weight from the bridge, and I'm hanging off his leg, off the 300-foot bridge. And then I'm like, I'm going for it. And then there was this song back then called Soundgarden, and they had this song called Jesus Christ Pose.
Wow.
And so I rolled his pant leg up, and I put it into my teeth from molars to molars, and I tested it, and if it wasn't whole, I could just grab with my hands back onto his pant leg, but it was going to hold, and I just let go of my hands, and I did like a no-hander, like a Jesus Christ Pose, and then grabbed it back to his leg.
You are a maniac.
So I hung
You
off.
were hanging off of a dude's pants with your teeth.
300 feet up. Yeah.
Did you ask him if his belt was done up?
Just for a second. Well, he was like sticking his leg through the railing, so
Yeah.
he couldn't get pulled through the bridge.
That's the craziest thing I've ever. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
No, the craziest thing is I told my mom about it 3 months later, and she came after me with the broom, hit me. What are you thinking? Anyway, so that was probably the stupidest and craziest thing I've ever done. But I went to Europe, and I used that training, mental
Focus
tool.
Yeah, yeah.
And I finally started cracking the top 10 in the World Cup. And then I was like a top 10 World Cup racer. And I was planning to win a World Cup, podium, and then win a World Cup. That was my dream. I was going for it. You're a racer. You want to win, right?
Yeah.
It was tough to beat those guys. You make one little tiny mistake and, Mark Fawcett and Jeff Greenwood. And
are you telling these guys your training regimen? Like,
yeah, they thought I was
You're
nuts.
ridiculous.
They thought I was nuts. But it's tough to beat those guys. So I did crack the top 10 in World Cup and in a bunch of pro races. There was a bunch of pro races at the time, like OP Pros and stuff, where all the World Cup guys were, and
And at this time, you're on the hard boots.
I'd switched to hard boots in '91, and I switched to hard boots full on free riding, racing, like all the time, just because I wanted to be one with my equipment.
Yeah.
And I used hard boots from '91 to 2001 for 10 years straight hard boots. And
10 years on the hard boots. That's wild. And you never wanted to snap into a pair of skis, buddy?
No.
That's a shame.
No, I was a boarder.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
Did you ever go and talk to your dad and be like, "Hey, did you ever tell him he was right?"
Oh yeah, he knew it.
Yeah,
he knew it all the time. He just studied it. He was a smart guy. But yeah, so I was like doing the pro mountain bike thing and training in the winter and racing in the winter.
What was like when it first kind of crossed over, when you're like, "Oh, I'm snowboarding and I'm a professional snowboarder and I'm doing this bike thing"? Was there like a clash? Was there ever a moment where you had to choose one or the other?
Not really, but you would actually snowboard right until springtime, until those last few races, and people on the bikes would ought to be biking. So then you'd come into the bike season, out of snowboard season, and you're all dialed on your board, but then you'd have to get up to speed real quick for those first few photo shoots on the bike. And, you're all dialed on your board. So it was kind of like, whoa. And then I'd be biking right up until the last minute and then have to get up to speed, on the board. So it was a bit of catch up all the time to stay, dialed and world class on both, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
So But I didn't really go pro mountain biking until 97. I was in a movie in 95, 96, 97. Crank came out, and then all of a sudden I was on
Christian
the
Beijing
Fro
again,
Riders,
right?
back with Christian Beijing.
Christian Beijing comes through again.
Totally. And, was making money and then getting plane tickets and
now, were you still on your mission to like win a World Cup, still top 10 at this point?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. I was actually now gunning for the Olympics in 98.
Wow.
And top 4 from every country get to go. And I was 4th in Canada in fist points for 3 years in a row. And I thought I was going to go to the Olympics. But then they changed the criteria to time trials right before the Olympics. And I planned, okay. So there was JCG Anderson, Mark Fawcett, Rusty Baglietti, Darren Chalmers, Greg Salmon, Nelson Jensen, like so many fast guys in Canada. And so I went, okay, well, I've been top 4 for 3 years in a row. There's no reason I can't do this. So I started off well. I got a 3rd, and then I got a 4th, and then I made a little mistake. I got a 6th. I think it was a 6th. And then my last chance, I was in the gate, and I just did my little mental thing, calm myself down. Beep, 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 dude. I pull out. I'm having a great run. Some kid cut underneath the fence at Nikiska and was like taking a shortcut across my race run while I'm coming down. And I'm like, move, move, move. And he moved, but he dropped his pole right in my line. And I came across and I arced across this aluminum pole with my toe edge. And it's, man-made snow there. It's ice. And I had a dull edge on my toe side for half the run. And
they didn't redo it?
No one saw it. It was like, kind of like storming and blustering. No one saw it.
What?
And I never got a rerun.
There was no judges or like...
Well, it's a long run, right? And it's like rollers and stuff.
And were you like explaining this? I'm sure.
I was explaining and trying to get a rerun going, and they didn't let me. So
this kid came across... Oh, what?
If I would have got a top 4, I could have gone to the Olympics.
Wow.
Anyway, so that really bugged me. That was a tough one to take.
I bet.
Who knows if I would have made it or not?
That was
I think I was having a good one. That was Nago.
That was Rebliati one?
Yeah, so, my longtime, Canadian teammate, and, we raced BC Amateur forever. Either me or him would be up for the win in
right.
BC circuit, amateur circuit, unless Jacob Best was there from Powder King, and he might have a good chance to win. He went and won the gold medal in the Olympics.
Right.
And, JCJ got the fastest time in the first run. It was 2 runs combined. Mark Fawcett was winning the first run, and he blew his vibration plate off his board. And he'd won all the time trials, and he'd won like 6 World Cups previously. He was going to win the Olympics. I feel really bad for him. But then Ross, I think he got 6th in the first run. And the second run, it got foggy. And I'm watching with my parents, and I'm like, Ross is going to win. And they're like, how do you know? And I go, nobody goes faster in the fog than a Whistler guy. Mm-hmm. And he won.
Yeah.
Third last turn. Big rut. People were going skidding out,
Yeah.
Thomas Pruger and all these guys from different countries. And then Ross went, nailed the third last turn, won the gold.
Wow.
And
were you sitting on the couch being like happy and excited, but also like, oh.
Oh, I was happy for him. But I was actually crying because that felt like a little piece of me winning because me and him had raced amateur forever, right? And there he was. He just won the gold medal. But it was pretty powerful.
And then all that,
and then he got busted for smoking pot or for
having
marijuana in his system. In his system,
yeah.
You're allowed.
You can get. That's the thing in Japan. You can be arrested or you can be charged because it's in your system.
Yeah, because
that's like possession. That's how they consider it.
So you're allowed 15 nanograms incidental, secondhand smoke, and he had 17.5 nanograms.
Yeah.
So they took his gold medal from him, and then they realized that it wasn't a banned substance. It wasn't World Cup, but it wasn't in the Olympics.
Right.
They checked the list, and they went, "Oh, we have to give your gold medal back." So they gave his gold medal back, and
they tried to. They like detained him because it's like
yeah. So I made it
basically in Japan. It was wild. Right.
So I made up a joke. How many Canadians does it take to win a gold medal? 1 in an 8th. How do you know when a Canadian does win a gold medal? They're the highest on the podium. So 2 weeks after that, I was at a race in Lake Tahoe, and I went to go from there to Big Bear in Southern California. And I went to do the drive, and I was with Mike Hildevald from the Danish Olympic team. And we hit the pipe and then took a shortcut over to Nevada and hit this major highway that would be a lot faster. And we went to the gas station, bought gas and rolling papers and Twinkies. And the lady phoned us in to the cops, and we got pulled over before we hit the California line. And in Nevada, it's a felony. Everywhere in the States at that time was a misdemeanor, but in Nevada it was a felony. And so we got pulled over, and I got charged with internal possession and spent 5.5 days in jail. And it was gnarly. So
did it make like the news, like the
everywhere? It went newspapers around the world.
And this was before your biking career.
My biking career
had just started.
It had already taken off. Yeah. And another Canadian snowboarder busted for pot everywhere in the world. And then I made the mistake of saying to one journalist, I came on vacation, I left on probation. My dad was a teacher in Kamloops. My mom was a nurse. Totally shamed the family name. It was not good. And I was riding for Oakley at the time. Oakley dropped me. Burton laughed and said, any press is good press.
Yeah.
And Rocky Mountain actually put out a little blurb in one of the mountain bike magazines. Said, even though Brett will not be smoking pot for a year, we don't expect much of a drop in his performance. And it was a blew over. And it was kind of a crazy time.
So was that kind of near the tail? That was like near the tail end of your like
racing career,
right?
Yeah. I continued racing up until 2000, and then I was racing like Kokanee Grand National Pro Bordercross circuit in Canada.
Bordercross.
And I retired after winning the Sunshine Grand National Canadians, and
you did a bunch of cool events like the Mount Baker Bank Slalom too.
I did the Mount Baker Bank Slalom, and then I've done it recently, and I got third in Mid Masters, and the last time I was there, I got third in Grandmasters, and
what's Grandmasters, like old guys?
Old guys,
yeah,
50 plus.
Yeah.
Well, I'm 50 plus.
Yeah, right.
But they don't give trophies or prize money there. It's one of the big 3 snowboard events in the world. There's the X Games, there's the Olympics, and there's the Mount Baker Bank Slalom. It's the original mountain bike, or original snowboard race.
Oh, for real? Like, is it actually that prestigious?
Oh, yeah. No, it's like, there's a lot of riders there, like Terry Hawkinson, who boycotted the Olympics, but he always hits the Mount Baker Bank Slalom.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the soul.
So you've got that, like, board trophy at home at your place.
Yeah, they give duct tape. Bronze, silver, and gold duct tape. And I've got 2 bronze duct tapes from the Mount Baker Bank Slalom.
That sweet little board that you have, that
when I got that, I won that
board,
too.
It's like almost like a little no board.
Yeah, I won that, and I wore Craig Kelly's speed suit that he sold me back in 1991.
Do you still have the speed suit?
I still have it.
Oh, we're gonna get a photo shoot with you in that thing.
Oh my God.
Do you still fit in it?
Barely. It's a workout to get into it. Yeah, because Craig was like 175 pounds. I'm like 220.
Can we go do a Brett Tippie photo shoot with it?
I think I have a shot in it already somewhere, but. Some of these guys were like, oh, check out the guy in the speed suit. And then these other dudes were like, dude, you know whose speed suit that was? And they're like, no. They're like, that was Craig Kelly's speed suit. And they're like, oh, wow, that's super cool.
Yeah, now, yeah. It's
high fives, you know?
Yeah, it's cool now.
But it was a blast from the past. But yeah, so then after 2000, I won the Canadian Grand Nationals, Kokanee, the big race, televised across Canada and whatnot. I basically retired from racing and just went full on into mountain biking. And
because you're like, you know what, I've kind of reached. Was it like a nice transition? You didn't seem like you didn't have to make a choice. It was just kind of like you were kind of.
I should have stayed with it.
Yeah.
I think I was getting, I was making some good money mountain biking. I was traveling the world. I wanted to focus on mountain biking. Things were happening fast, and I wanted to go bigger and ride steeper stuff, and
you're hanging out with your buddies too.
Yeah, hanging out with my buddies, and I raced for 10 years, like full on, and I put everything I had into it. I tried to be 1% faster in every possible way that I could. I put every bit into racing and shaving tenths of seconds off all the time, and the waxing and the diet and drinking lots of water and exercising and doing one-legged dips and incline sit-ups and carving gravel and balancing on 300-foot bridges, and I put my heart and soul into it, and I did that,
Mm-hmm.
and I just wanted to free ride, And
yeah.
So,
and now you're free. Now you think you love it more than you love biking. It seems sometimes.
Well, no, I don't know about that, but it's pretty close maybe. Mm-hmm. But I also started doing a lot of TV announcing, and I started hosting the World Cup of Snowboarding for CTV Sportsnet, and I became a color commentator, and I knew all the World Cup guys, and I knew the sport very well. So I started doing that with Tim Milne and Dave Hackett, and it was a transition into like the media side, and
so it's funny that snowboarding has set you up for almost everything that you do in mountain biking. It was almost like it was almost like the training wheels. Yeah, it's like you learned to travel the world on this pro World Cup circuit snowboarding, which just set you up and made you comfortable for this whirlwind life of traveling the world as a mountain biker, right?
Totally. And then Daryl Hackett. Did I say Dave Hackett? I said Daryl Hackett. I mixed up my names there. Daryl Hackett.
And then you get into then snowboarding leads you into this media stuff, which is now like you're the guy, and you have been for a long time with like pink bike videos and just the tip. And
totally. And I learned a lot of things. Like CTV Sportsnet was legit, and I learned all about storytelling and the procedures of what to do. And Tim Milne and Daryl Hackett really showed me the ropes of the TV world, and that led me into another show that went for 4 years called The Sacred Ride, and that was all about free riding. And then we're doing catboarding and heliboarding and snowmobile shuttling, sled boarding. And so then I kind of transitioned from the racing TV shows into the free riding TV shows, which was super fun, and that led into doing the mountain bike coverage, like you say. So that was pretty cool.
Wild.
But yeah, so then everything was going well. I was being a pro mountain biker, and I was still a pro snowboarder, but I was transitioning, like I say, into the media stuff, and I was killing it and making good money and traveling the world. And then I just kind of went off the rails, partying too hard, and I just threw it all away like an idiot. And lost my way, and everything was going great, but I wanted more and more and more. I wanted to ride hard and party harder, and it took me a while to get it together, to find the passion and love for snowboarding and biking again and life, but I did. And my buddy Greg Salmon, like I've told in different stories before, gave me a job doing construction and gave me a place to stay, rented a room to me for cheap, and he had some old hard boots from Darren Chalmers laying around, and a 180 swallowtail. I kind of put those two together and went snowboarding again, and I was like, this is really fun. Yeah, I miss this. Yeah, and I kind of started shredding again, and I had a snowmobile from before that. I was at my parents' place, and I brought out the snowmobile, and I started snowmobiling again and getting some powder in the backcountry, and got the bug back. Yeah. And yeah, so then I can't seem to get enough.
No, that's why I was saying, like, it almost seems like you love it more. I think because you have this insatiable need for it. I get it too, right? Like I started a skiing podcast, right. So that's sweet. And like
I had one gift of recovery from Baldface. Baldface invited me to go catboarding. Yeah, and that was an insane gesture and generosity, because I was working for $20 an hour carrying lumber, and Bald is Beautiful reached out on social media and invited me for this trip, and I went and shredded nipple deep powder at Baldface, and it was amazing. And that rekindled it, and everything was rolling. That was a gift of recovery. He'd found out that I was sober from my buddy Mark Fawcett, and Jeff Pensiero invited me there, and so that was amazing. So that got the appetite wet even more, and just continuing to get as much powder as I can in the winter and as much single track in the summer.
You were just in Keefer Lake. You've been a couple trips there.
I've been to a bunch of trips to Keefer Lake. So they were a new operation, and a friend of mine runs this amazing cat snowboarding, cat skiing, whatever you want to do, east of Vernon. And it's super dry snow, the Monastery Mountains, super dry. And they don't have much wind there, so they just have wicked pow. And they had a new operation, and he asked me if I'd come and do some Instagram videos and promote his place. So I said, sure. And so I've gotten them hundreds of thousands of views. And I took some photos there with Andrew Lawrence. And Andrew Lawrence and we got a cover of Mountain Life magazine. Yep. And then I got a 2-page spread in Snowboard Journal magazine. And then I just got another single page from Keefer Lake in the latest Mountain Life. And so they're happy with the coverage I'm getting. So they just, offered me to come up again. So I just went up there with Marcus Riga because Andrew Lawrence was actually going for a visit in Ontario. And it was minus 28 up there at one point, minus 25 for most of it, and then minus 18 in the last day. Super cold, but just the
dust,
wicked
snow, just dust.
Smoke.
Yeah.
Just shredding over the head powder turns, and that place is amazing. And the lodge is out of hand. It's this monstrosity of a big log building, like overlooking the lake. And they want to start doing some mountain biking up there as well in the summer. So they got it going on.
Stay tuned for the Keefer Lake mountain bike.
Keefer Lake,
mountain bike episode.
Totally. So, yeah, it's happening. And I'm snowboarding tomorrow with my daughter. Well, she's skiing. Both daughters, they ski. My wife skis. I'm the only snowboarder in the family, and I have no pressure. They can board or ski whatever they want to do. They want to ski, so I'm like, that's cool.
You came up today, even though the roads were a bit hairy. Today was one of the best days of my life. It's like one of the best days of the year.
So deep.
And it's supposed to snow it was 60 centimeters it snowed in the last, that's 2 feet.
So it was like 40 centimeters last night and 20 today?
Yeah, it was 38 overnight, and then and I looked right before you came, it said 60 in the last 24 hours.
Nice.
And then it's supposed to do that again tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah.
And today was one of the best days I've ever had in 22 years of living here.
Yeah.
And so it's good. So
it's happening.
You made the right. That's what I asked you. I'm like, are you staying up here? And you're like, no, I'm going to drive back. I'm like, no, you're not.
No, I'm staying at the Ava Hotel.
But you weren't originally.
I know. I was going to go home, and then I was like, I don't want to drive home and then drive back up in the morning.
Because when I called you again, I'm like, did you get it? Oh yeah, I got a room. I'm like, I knew you would.
The Ava Hotel comes through again, man. Yeah.
Right? I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's really awesome. Like I said, I've always kind of been curious. Doing this show, I always hear all the bits and pieces. And then, people have been like, a couple people have been like, hey, it's winter, let's hear some snowboarding stories. So it's cool that you put that whole kind of history together.
Yeah, it's a part of my life. And, I think the snowboarding that I did back in the day influenced my mountain biking and mountain biking movies, because Richie was a pro skier and shooting, with Trevor Peterson and Eric Bahoda and the rock stars of the day, and he was in some matchstick movies and whatnot, and he was on the cover of ski magazines, and I was a pro snowboarder, so we brought that influence from skiing and snowboarding into the early mountain bike movies, blowing up gravel sandy turns and doing chutes and jumping off cliffs, and our snowboarding and our skiing influenced mountain biking.
Really did, yeah.
And I'm proud of that and stoked on that. And it's still part of my life. And there's so many dudes out there that shred mountain bikes, that shred on the skis and the snowboard, because it goes hand in hand. And when there's so snowy, you can go ride your bike. But
lots of dudes in town. I ran into Remy Metier in Peak Chair the other day.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, nice dude. He's like, Mark from the pod. He's like, oh, hey, man, nice to meet you. Because we did that episode with him over Zoom.
We did it Zoom, so we didn't meet you. That's right.
It was number 3. And I'm like, oh, hey. And I sat and we chat because we were waiting for the peak to crack.
Yeah.
And they had been there for, I don't know, maybe half hour before I got there, and it was 1:30 or something like that. Pow day, just we're waiting. The line wasn't huge, but I think they were waiting, and people were starting to leave, and I'm like, stick around. They're like,
it's gonna go.
They're like, no, we're gonna call it. They left. You know what happened? 5 minutes later, it cracked, and I was like, yes.
Did Remy leave or did he stay?
Oh yeah, they left. Yeah,
no way. And then it opened.
Yeah, I was like, don't leave, man. But part of me was like, leave. Because I know how it works, right? And then it cracked, and then I did one lap, and then I came back, and I think they had done a full lap, and I connected in with them right at the end there, and I was like, oh, right on.
I wonder how long it's gonna be till it opens Now, like, it's gonna open tomorrow. I wonder. I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
I heard them bombing.
If it snows as much as it did, I doubt it.
Yeah, I doubt it too.
I have a massage on Tuesday. I was supposed to have like a personal training thing on Monday. I canceled that. I was like, no way, I'm canceling. And I have a massage booked for Tuesday morning, and I'm kind of like, ooh, can I get it in the afternoon? Like after skiing? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But anyways, tomorrow is going to be good. I'm glad you're up here.
Yeah, it's good to be here, and yeah. What can you do? You can't really bike right now. It's been like an Arctic outflow, minus 25. It's tough to bike, so
right, might as well snowboard.
Yeah, and it's good training, good for the legs, good for the heart, good for the soul.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good times. Well, there we go. Well, thanks for asking me some questions and doing a podcast about my snowboarding.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
people have been asking about it for real.
And if people want to check out, if you are a skier out there, Mark does the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers.
I do.
It's the sister show, brother show. I don't know.
Partner show.
And you interview all the top skiers in the world.
That's where I got the idea for this. Is I always interviewed ski pros and photographers, and basically the same kind of concept. And I was thinking about what I wanted to do for another show. I'm like, I should do something else. And I saw you that one day, and I went, Brett Tippie. I'm like, I instantly knew. I'm like, that's the guy that I want to do it, and it worked out. So basically, if you like this show and you like skiing,
yeah, check it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there we go. Thanks for having a word with me about me. Enough of me, more about you. What do you think of me?
Was this one weird for you? Because you're like, not.
That's not weird.
I was like, put the headphones on, because you're still the host.
Yeah.
Right? Because I step into my hosting duties, but I try to like shut up, and I'm like, put the headphones on because it's your show this time.
Yeah, right. Oh, wait, we have to end with a joke.
No, that's right. It's your show.
It's my show. I need to do it.
Because we did this on my show before.
That's right. Okay.
And you're sitting in a different seat today too. That's probably why.
Yeah. Okay. How many snowboarders does it take to screw in a light bulb?
I don't know.
2. One to screw it in, and the other one to say, "Nice turns."
Nice turns. That's a ski instructor joke too.
It is.
Right?
Too. It's converted. Yeah.
I didn't come prepared either.
That's all right.
So I was telling someone, I know, like, I can remember 2 jokes. I see all your jokes, and we have those little joke compilation videos.
Yeah.
And I've watched them all like 10 times while I'm editing it. I've probably seen them 100 times each. I can't remember any of them. I saw one the other day, and they write all those little dad jokes on the board as you get onto the chairlift.
Yeah.
And there was one the other day about masks. Masks, and you don't. I'm gonna blow it, man. You don't need caffeine because masks are like coffee filters.
Oh, jeez.
Or something like that. People are like, boo.
I'll set you up with one. You'll probably know the answer to this.
All right.
What's the difference between a ski instructor and God?
I don't know.
God doesn't think he's a ski instructor.
It's true, though. Do you know what? I ski instructed for like 5-6 years, and I did a bunch of stuff under the table, and like I enjoyed it. But to this day, in 200 episodes, I'll have episode 200 this week. I've never had a ski instructor on my show.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, someone asked me, how would you have a ski instructor in your show? I'm like, because no, I don't want to, because they suck. No, I'm kidding. If you're a ski instructor, you're not. But I did it, and it's not interesting to me.
Yeah, that's funny.
All right.
We're going to get back to some mountain biking real soon. We got Miranda Miller queued up. I got Brage Vestovic queued up. Valley Hole is going to be on very soon. So stay tuned for more mountain bike stuff. Thanks for checking out, everybody. And we'll talk to you later. Cheers, bud.
Yeah, buddy.
Right on. Ow!